Hello everyone, welcome to Bar Electronics. In this session, we will discuss the thyristor turn-on methods. Let us start with a brief introduction. We know that a thyristor has two stable states. First one is the forward blocking and the second one is the forward conduction. Switching the thyristor from the forward blocking state, which is also the off state, to the forward conduction state, which is the on state, is known as triggering or turn on. The criteria for triggering the thyristor depends on several variables such as supply voltage, gate current, temperature, and so on. We know that if the thyristor's anode is made positive with respect to its cathode, the thyristor becomes forward biased and moves to forward blocking state. A thyristor can be made to move from forward blocking state to forward conduction state by performing any one of the following methods. Here, as you can see, we have in fact listed 5 different thyristor turn on methods. The first one is the forward voltage triggering, then we have the temperature triggering, dV by dt triggering, light triggering, and lastly gate triggering. Now let us discuss each one of them in much detail, starting with the forward voltage triggering. This type of triggering is one of the most commonly used turn-on technique, and in this particular technique, the forward anode to cathode voltage is increased to a sufficiently large value. By doing so, the depletion layer width will increase at junction J2. Also, there will be an increase in the minority charge carriers accelerating at junction J2. This leads to an avalanche breakdown of the junction J2 at a forward breakover voltage represented by VBO. At this point, the thyristor turns on and moves into conduction mode and a large current flows through it. During the turn on state, the forward voltage drop across the thyristor is in the range of 1 to 1.5 volts, and this may be increased with the load current. However, in practice, this method is not employed because it needs a very large anode to cathode voltage. Further, once the voltage is more than the forward breakover voltage VBO, it generates very high currents which may damage the thyristor. Therefore, in most of the practical cases, this type of triggering is avoided. Coming to the second type of triggering, the temperature triggering. Now, the reverse leakage current of the thyristor, we know that depends on the junction temperatures. If the temperature is increased to a certain value, the number of hole electron pairs will automatically increase to a large volume. This causes an increase in the device leakage current, which further increases the current gains of the transistor. I hope you remember the two transistor model. So the current gains of each transistor are increased. Now if the current gains increase, then this starts a regenerative action inside the thyristor, since alpha 1 plus alpha 2 will approach unity, and this type of approach may cause very large currents across the thyristor, and the thyristor may break and trigger in a false way. In essence, increasing the temperature at junction J2 causes the breakdown of the junction, and hence the device starts to conduct. This triggering occurs under certain circumstances, particularly when the device temperature is high. Therefore, this is also referred to as a false triggering technique. Lastly, this type of triggering is also practically not employed because it causes the thermal runaway, which may damage the device. Now, coming to the next triggering technique, dV by dt triggering. In forward blocking state, junctions J1 and J3 of the thyristor are forward biased, while junction J2 is reverse biased. So, the junction J2 behaves as a parallel plate capacitor with the two conducting plates J1 and J3, with a dielectric J2 in the middle. And this is due to the space charges in the depletion region as well. Now, the charging current of the capacitor can be given by the equation I is equals to the value of the capacitor multiplied by the rate of change of voltage across the capacitor, where you can understand dV by dt is the rate of change of applied voltage and capital C is the junction capacitance. Now, from equation 1, if the rate of change of the applied voltage is made large, this would lead to an increase in the charging current, which is enough to increase the values of the individual transistor current gains, that is alpha. So, the thyristor will once again move into the forward conduction mode even when there is no gate signal provided. So, this particular method is not practically implemented because it is a false turn on process, as well as this can produce very high voltage spikes across the thyristor, so there will be considerable damage to the device itself. So lastly we state this is also a not suggested technique for triggering the thyristor. Coming to the next type of triggering, light triggering. Any thyristor turned on by light radiation is also called as light activated SCR, in short LASCR. This type of triggering is employed for phase controlled converters in high voltage direct current transmission systems, in short HVDC. In this method, light rays with appropriate wavelength and intensity are allowed to strike the junction J2. LASCRs consist of a niche in the inner P layer. Therefore, when the light strikes on this niche, electron hole pairs are generated at the junction J2, which provides additional charge carriers at the junction, which leads further to the thyristor turn on. Now, lastly, we have the most efficient and common technique of triggering a thyristor, and we call it as the gate triggering technique. In the gate triggering method, a positive voltage is applied between the gate and the cathode terminals of the thyristor. When the thyristor is in forward blocking state, a sufficient voltage at the gate injects electrons into the junction J2. This results in increased reverse leakage current and hence the breakdown of junction J2 even when the VAK is at a voltage much lower than the forward breakover voltage VBO. If the gate current applied is high, more electrons are injected into the junction J2 and the device will move into conduction state at a much lower applied value of VAK. We can use three particular types of gate signals to turn on the thyristor. The first one is the DC signal, then we have the AC signal, lastly the pulse signal. Now, based upon these signals, the gate triggering can be called as DC gate triggering, AC triggering and pulse triggering technique. Now, let us discuss these triggering techniques in individual cells. Right, starting and discussing about the DC gate triggering. In this type of triggering, a sufficient DC voltage is applied between the gate and cathode terminals in such a way that the gate is made positive with respect to the cathode. The gate current will drive the thyristor into conduction mode. In this, a continuous gate signal is applied at the gate and hence it causes higher internal power dissipation, or in simple words, higher power loss. Now, coming to the second technique, the AC gate triggering. This is the most commonly used method for AC applications where the thyristor is employed for applications such as a switching device. With the proper isolation between the power and the control circuit, the thyristor is triggered by the phase shift AC voltage derived from the main supply. The firing angle is controlled by changing the phase angle of the gate signal. However, only one half of the input cycle is available for the gate drive to control the firing angle, and for the other half of the cycle, a reverse voltage is applied between the gate and cathode. This is one of the limitations of AC triggering technique. Also, separate step-down or pulse transformer would be required to supply the voltage to gate drive from the main supply. Now coming lastly to the pulse triggering. It is the most popular method of triggering the thyristor, and in this technique the gate is supplied with either a single pulse or a train of pulses. The main advantage of this method is that the gate drive is fed with pulsed voltage, and hence the gate losses are reduced in greater amount by applying either a single or periodically appearing pulses. Further, for isolating the gate drive from the main supply, a pulse transformer can be of great help here. However, while designing the gate control circuit, the following points must be considered. Let us look at the first point here. It states the gate signal can be removed after the thyristor is turned on. This is because, as we know, a thyristor is a latching device. So, once the device turns on, the gate loses all its control and therefore the gate signal can be removed. Continuing the point, a continuous gating signal, as we have seen in the DC, would increase the power loss in the gate junction, and therefore a pulsed voltage will be a lot more appropriate than either an AC or DC gate signal. The second point is, while the thyristor is reverse biased, gate signal should not be applied. Otherwise, the thyristor may fail due to increased leakage current. Now, this is a very important point. Let us understand how. As we know, a thyristor has three junctions. The first and third junction will be reverse biased when the device itself is in the reverse biased condition. However, the middle junction, junction J2, will be forward biased. If you provide continuous gating signal during this condition, then the junction J2 may create a lot of energy and electron hole pairs which may break the junctions J1 and J3. Therefore, we state whenever the thyristor is reverse biased, gate signal should not be provided at all. Lastly, the width of the gate pulse represented by Tg must be longer than the time required for the anode current to rise to the holding current value. Now we know what is holding current. This is the minimum amount of current that must flow across the thyristor anode to cathode to say the thyristor is in an on state. So when you are trying to turn on a thyristor, the input gate pulse width must be long enough to the time till which the thyristor current reaches the holding current. If the pulse width is short, then the thyristor current will never reach the holding current, and the moment the pulse ends, the thyristor returns to the forward blocking state. It will never continue to the forward conduction. So, a minimum of Tg pulse width has to be maintained for proper triggering. In practice, however, the pulse width Tg is normally made more than the turn on time of the thyristor T on. I hope you know that a thyristor turn on involves two particular time instants, delay as well as rise. So, totally the overall thyristor triggering pulse width should be greater than the theoretical value of the thyristor turn on time T on. Right. So, that is all about the different techniques that are used to turn on a thyristor. Thank you.